Chapter 35. Lion's Pride. A week after Lord Walder's death, the sunrise shone with exceptional brilliance. I was already out helping with the construction of the wall when shouts began to come from the camp. At first I thought them to be an argument, as was typical for early morning, when people roused from sleep by those who had worked through the night for their shifts would grouse. But more and more people began to shout, then cheer, then stopped work altogether. Others from the camp rushed to the wall, climbing the makeshift scaffolding, and began raising their arms in joy, cheering at whatever had grabbed the attention of the masses. My attention and curiosity roused, I motioned to Tyrion and the Queensguard. "I wonder what's got them so excited." "Why don't we go find out?" Tyrion said as he placed a bucket of pitch down. The wall was going up, but it wasn't going up without a contingency plan. Every inch of the wall would be covered in pitch, as a means of defense should the dead decide to simply cross the water some other way. If push came to shove, we could set the entire wall on fire. It was stone, after all. The fire wouldn't hurt it. Robert led the way, moving commoner and noble alike out of our path as needed, if they didn't move in response to his bellowing to make way for the Queen. He was absolutely in his element, preparing a battlefield, and apart from the battle with the dead beyond the wall, I had never seen him look more alive. He was built for war, and was never more alive than when waging it. We climbed a ramp that led to the top of the wall. Robert was kind enough to lift me up, because even at the top of the scaffolding, the wall was still a foot taller than I was. "What's happening out there?" Tyrion protested, as no one had bothered to lift him. And no one would, since he had expressly forbidden it, feeling that the act was demeaning for a dwarf. I had no such reservations. I looked down at him from Robert's grasp and gave him a cheeky smile. "Shall I describe it to you, or would you like me to find you a box?" Tyrion stared up at me, deciding whether he should be offended or amused by the question. Robert had no such qualms and belted out a laugh. I joined him with a tittering giggle, and Tyrion's indecision broke with a self-deprecating chuckle. "I'm afraid we're fresh out of boxes, so I'll need you to describe it to me," he said with a smile. I looked out beyond the wall and across the neck to the horizon. It glittered like golden waves that were lapping lazily forward. Others might not be able to see beyond the reflected light, but I could. Things took shape, and the sight that met me was a welcome one. Lannister troops, the gold in their armor reflecting the morning light, were marching toward the twins. Banners from dozens of smaller houses and masses of small folk trailed behind them. This wasn't just reinforcements, it was a large rescue operation. From what I could tell, the Lannisters had gathered every single person capable of moving from every village on their journey north. "Well," Tyrion insisted, "don't keep me in suspense." "What do you see?" My grin infected him, causing him to smile even before I gave voice to the answer. "Red and gold. House Lannister approaches with thousands in their wake." Tyrion's face was a wash of relief. We hadn't been getting ravens or updates since we left the wall, and no word had come back acknowledging the ones we'd sent from House Frey, announcing this to be our new main encampment. "Some good news for once," he sighed with relief. I looked around and spotted Ned and Serena, who had been watching the golden light on the horizon. "Lord Stark, Lady Cowsland, it's House Lannister with refugees. Gather horses and men. Ride out to meet them and offer what aid you can to the small folk to ensure safe passage across the twins." The pair of them were already on their way, as they acknowledged the command. A runner was sent to Lord Emmon to let him know to expect a busy day helping the refugees cross. As cheers went up for the Lannisters, we made our way back to our tent. I would at least clean myself up before their arrival, so I wasn't completely covered in dirt and mud. Tyrion suggested that we change into something presentable, but I disagreed. There was no sense wasting time changing when we would be hard at work again soon enough. He pointed out that we wouldn't be working on the wall for the rest of the day since our priority with the influx of so many fighting men and refugees would be coordinating where they would need to be sent to be most useful. Acknowledging his point, I agreed to change. I had a more practical dress picked out, yellow, made with sturdy, thick cloth and cut higher to my shins so that it was likely to get soiled. Tyrion changed into a fine red and gold tunic, black trousers, and boots. "Red and gold today?" I asked playfully. "Feeling homesick?" "My family arrives and I should like to acknowledge them in some small way," he replied, knowing full well I knew his feelings on his family. He wasn't as sour with them as he used to be, but there were still pangs left over from his time before he'd met me. "You are always a small acknowledgement of them," I teased. "We're the same height, woman," he protested with amusement. I nodded and grinned. "That's how I know." He waved dismissively at me, giving a bah as he ensured his outfit was presentable. "It surprises me to say it, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing Father. It's been some time. Perhaps his opinion of me has changed after seeing my work as Master of Coin. Bringing the country back from near bankruptcy without touching Lannister gold was no small feat. I'm sure he can appreciate the talent it took," I assured him as I approached him and placed a small kiss on his cheek. Once dressed and ready to receive Tywin and the other nobles, we mounted horses and rode to the twins to await their arrival. It took a half hour before the first of the migrant progression made its way across the twins. At its head was Jaime, weary and exhausted, his armor soiled with dirt and grime. More of the Lannisters rode behind him, battle-weary and glum. Tyrion's face was wrought with confusion. Tywin was not among them. Tyrion spurred his horse forward and raised a hand to greet Jaime, pulling his horse alongside Jaime's. "Brother, it is good to see you." Jaime gave a weary but genuine smile. "It's good to see you as well, Tyrion. The war seems not to have touched you." "I've done my part in my own way," Tyrion replied. "I'm not half the fighter you are, after all." "You may need to be soon," Jaime said with a heavy sigh. This was unlike the man. Tyrion had set him up perfectly to make a joke about his height, and Jaime hadn't taken the bait. Tyrion shrugged the oddity off. "Where is Father? Is he helping bring up the rear?" "He's likely dead," Jaime replied. "Or somewhat dead. However you call it. He rallied a force of men during our press north to hold back the enemy." Tyrion's face went pale. "Father, dead? I cannot imagine it." "Best that you accept it," Jaime replied despondently. "He knew what he was doing. He saved the family, so we must carry on and do our best to survive." I heard Jenna Lannister gasp behind me as she heard the conversation. Jenna was what I imagined Tywin must have been like before the death of his wife. More personality, a bit sarcastic, but still shrewd and uncompromising. The loss of her brother must have been a heavy blow to her both personally and strategically. Say what you want of the man, but he was one of the greatest tacticians in Westeros, and his reputation was something worthy of being feared and respected. His loss was significant. As Jaime and Tyrion approached me, Jaime bowed his head. "Your Grace. It does my heart good to see you well. You have my sympathy for the loss of your father," I replied, giving a sympathetic bow of my head. Lord Tywin was a pragmatic and staunch individual that held his family above all else, and he will be missed. It was about as kind of a thing as anyone could say about Tywin. "Your Grace does him great honor to say such a thing," Jaime smiled sadly. He waited for me to move my horse opposite Tyrion before continuing into the camp. "As head of House Lannister, it now falls to me to ensure the safety and well-being of those under our rule. We have brought everyone we could with us to try and give them the best chance of survival." "We have a camp set up for the refugees," I replied, pointing off into the distance of the camp, which was swarming with activity. "Most of the northern forces are here, but their families are welcoming refugees to their holdings. We'll allow them a few days' rest before allowing most of them to continue north to designated houses. Most? Jamie asked. He looked at me as if the answer was ludicrous. Most, I echoed. Men of fighting age will have to stay behind. The dead already outnumber us. We need every soldier we can muster. If they can swing a weapon, they'll have to remain here. Your Grace, Jamie sighed with exasperation. Many of these small folk have never even held a sword in their life. You cannot expect them to. They've swung an axe and a scythe, I interrupted him immediately. They've used a pitchfork and a shovel. All of those are weapons in any man's hands. An errant blow that kills the enemy is better than one not swung, because the arm that would have wielded it wasn't there. This isn't a moral dilemma, my lord. It's a numbers game now. We have fewer. We must make up the difference with every body we can and fill the remaining gap with strategy. That's rather harsh, don't you think, Your Grace? To demand so much from people who have spent the last few weeks constantly walking just to get here, he asked. I pulled my horse to a stop and looked out over the camp. This camp has over 1 million men and women who fought against the dead in freezing conditions beyond the wall, then turned south and then marched for a month straight so they could start helping with the defense of the neck, my lord. The people you bring with you are in no worse a situation than those I brought with me. Would you tell them all to flee so a few thousand could try and stem the tide? He looked at me, the weariness of the past few weeks, and the heartache of losing his father fresh in features. His words caught in his throat for several moments before he simply nodded. I see your point, Your Grace. I wish it was a point I didn't have to make, Jamie. I truly do, I replied, as I spurred my horse once more. But this is not a battle between houses where civilians can hope to not be involved. This is a battle between the living and the dead, between life and death. And anyone who can take up arms in the cause of life must do so. Jamie stared at me as if he had seen a ghost. Is something wrong? I asked as I noticed his expression. His face softened and he gave a shake of his head. That was what my father said before he led his men to cover our retreat. What? Tyrion grumbled. No message for his youngest child before he left? Speak to me tonight, Tyrion, Jamie replied. I have something for you when there are fewer eyes around. That grabbed both our interests. Tyrion and I shared a curious look. Tywin's feelings for Tyrion had been well known. Even when we were married, Tywin wasn't exactly subtle about being pleased to be rid of him, especially when it was to be rid of him to an ally with great potential. To think that he might have left something for Tyrion before he died was surprising to say the least. We spent the rest of the day organizing the refugees Jamie had brought with him. It had taken hours for all of those people to cross the Twins, and even longer to get them settled. Most hadn't brought anything in the way of supplies, let alone camping gear. Most had simply grabbed food, clothes, and some keepsakes as they were hurried from their homes. Tents were packed to capacity, and campfires were the most warmth many people could hope for. They would need to be dispersed across the north in short order in order to keep the camp's stores stable for the foreseeable future. It wasn't until well into the evening that Tyrion and I were able to be alone. Just as we were about to turn in for the evening, Jon pulled the flap to the tent open. Your Grace, he said in a low voice, Lord Jamie requests to speak with you and Lord Tyrion. I looked at Tyrion, my eyes searching his to see if he was ready to go through this. He nodded, reluctant, but determined. Send him in. I sighed as the two of us took our seats once more. Moments later, Jamie, joined by Serena and his Aunt Jenna, stepped into the tent. I would have to have a word with Jon about announcing all of the guests wanting to come in. The three of them genuflected as they entered. Your Grace, Jamie greeted me softly. I apologize for the late hour. I was hoping to delay this for as long as possible. That caught my attention. I arched a brow and cocked my head to the side. You make it sound like what you have to say will upset me. Jamie chuckled softly and shook his head. No, Your Grace. Not at all. At least, it won't upset you. I was more concerned for the sake of my brother Tyrion, hummed curiously. Does this have something to do with father? He left you a letter, Jamie replied, as he produced an envelope from his coat. The envelope was sealed with red wax, stamped with the Lannister crest. He stared at the envelope for a few moments. I'm not sure what it says, but considering his relationship with you... An understanding smirk played at the edge of Tyrion's lips as he held his hand out for the letter. You're afraid it will be one last jab from beyond the grave. Give it here. It can't be any worse than anything he said to my face while he was alive. Jamie laughed with resignation as he handed the letter to Tyrion. I suppose you're right. Tyrion took the letter and broke the seal with surprising care. The tension in the room grew palpable as everyone watched him read it, waiting with anticipation for his reaction. Tyrion's expression never changed as he read through the pages. Tywin must have been in a mood when he was writing, because there were 3 pages worth of sentiments. After a few minutes, a tear rolled down Tyrion's cheek. He sniffled, then folded the letter carefully before slipping it back into its envelope. Are you all right? I asked as I noted his reaction. Was he that cruel? Jamie asked, concern lacing tone. Crueler than you can know, Tyrion replied. Jenna huffed in irritation. Leave it to Tywin to spit venom even in his final goodbyes. That's not what I mean when I say he was cruel, Tyrion clarified. He was proud of me. For my marriage, for my work as Master of Coin, for the way I helped to handle all of this situation. The one time he expressed anything positive about me beyond carrying his name. And he does in a letter before he died. I can't even shout at him or make him feel guilty for the way he's treated me all these years. He went silent for a few moments. I can't even thank him for the sentiments. I slipped from my chair and moved over to hug him, letting my care and understanding pour into the embrace. He accepted the gesture and hugged me about the neck, squeezing firmly. As he pulled away, he looked up at Jamie. He gave me one last instruction for you, though. What was that? Jamie asked, as curious as the rest of us. He said to make sure you get married before it's too late, Tyrion chuckled. Apparently, you're the failure between us, for not being in position to continue the family line. Jamie let out a deprecating laugh. I suppose neither of us will live up to his standards. Who possibly could? Jenna snickered. She turned to look at Serena. Well, Lady Cowsland? Shall we see Lord Tywin's last command done? Serena smiled, nodded, and looked at Jamie. It would be my pleasure. I grinned wide. Looks like we need to have a wedding.